you like audiobooks or audio shows, check out a free trial of Audible. Just click the link in the description.
Welcome to Mindshock. This is your host, Bruce McGuire.
And Maxwell Powers.
And today we are discussing shadow people.
What the hell is shadow people?
We'll get into that. These paranormal entities. Some people think they're ghosts. Some people think they're aliens. Another explanation is that they are interdimensional travelers from other planes of existence.
You love interdimensional because that always comes from you. Like,
well, is it that I love it, or is it that it's an explanation that might fit an objective logical analysis might prove that
possible.
might be one of the most likely explanations if
possible.
If these people are telling the truth, which is always a big if. And here on Mindshock, we are not peddling anything as true or not true. We are simply examining theories.
But I find that interesting anyway. Like different dimensions, like coming in and out. That's awesome.
Yeah, well, you know what? The other thing that's kind of crazy is that in the past, like a few decades ago, there was a lot of the so-called mainstream illogical sheep who they always just kind of scoffed at any kind of interdimensional talk, called it unscientific. In more recent decades, it's kind of become more accepted in the scientific community because they're researching all of these other dimensions. So it's just kind of interesting how modern science is slowly starting to catch up with the wisdom of the ancients. So once again, if you like our podcast, make sure you subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell for notifications. If you like the video, hit the like button. Feel free to share it across social media platforms. And you can check us out on Reddit, Patreon, Facebook. Make sure you like our Facebook page, and Twitter. Also, if you appreciate the podcast, you can donate to our PayPal as well. Just check the link in the description. So let's go through the basics. So you don't know anything about shadow people, Maxwell?
No. Shadow people. Huh.
So basically, these are entities, usually humanoid figures, interpreted by some who experience this phenomena as paranormal or supernatural. Basically, the presence of some kind of entity, possibly a ghost or demon, possibly interdimensional, possibly just a figment of their imagination, which is what the so-called skeptics will say. Just a quick aside on skeptics. You know what's kind of funny? Like they proclaim to be skeptics. Like, I mean, I'm a skeptic. I'm a true skeptic. I believe nothing. I'm not going to believe it's a ghost or it's not a ghost. Like, whereas the so-called skeptics, they're not really skeptical of the mainstream propaganda positions. They're skeptical of any kind of critical thinking that goes against that. Sometimes it's warranted, like if it's a crazy person that just expects them to believe their story. But in other cases, where there's multiple witnesses, where there's video evidence, where there's physical evidence, the so-called skeptics, their cognitive dissonance will dismiss all of that outright. And they will only maintain their position of dogmatic thinking, which in another 100 years will be outdated and viewed upon as a silly notion, as we have learned from history. So, but to jump into specifically shadow people, once again, going into folklore, legends, and mythology, shadowy creatures or entities have been discussed since the dawn of man. So these are, some of them are spiritual. Most of these descriptions are spiritual in nature. Usually, these are nefarious entities, but some of them are simply described as entities from the underworld or shadowy creatures, which may or may not be nefarious. Some of them are kind of viewed as similarly to some kind of animals, where they just exist in these parallel dimensions or in between dimensions. There are some interesting theories that shadow people are not necessarily creatures from another dimension, but they're stuck in between dimensions or for whatever reason. Or while they're traveling between dimensions, you can catch glimpses of them as they travel through ours. What do you think about that, Maxwell?
So they're stuck in between dimensions?
Or, well, that's what I said like a minute ago. Or when people see shadow people, they're just catching glimpses of these entities as they're passing in between dimensions. So when they pass through ours, we can see them very briefly. And usually it's out of the corner of one's eye. So we will be examining this peripheral vision phenomena and whether or
Man, I love that. That's creepy as hell.
yeah, well,
Because
wait.
because everyone had that experience where like you're walking down or you're in the dark and like you're convinced that there was something that moved there or
Yeah,
something.
we're going to go into that pretty deeply because it is fascinating. I think most people will admit that they have seen shadowy figures out of the corner of their eyes, and then when you look at it with the middle of your eye, you can't see it. And then sometimes when you look away, you could see it again. Or sometimes when you're walking or moving, you can catch a glimpse of it real quick, and then you can't see it again, and then you're second guessing yourself. Did you see something? Did you not? And then usually if you're a illogical thinker, your cognitive dissonance will immediately dismiss it as, oh, it must have just been some kind of black spot and it's nothing. Because most people are too mentally uncomfortable to confront even the possibility that maybe these are interdimensional entities, and it's kind of creepy. So a lot of people don't want to think about that. But how insane is it if let's say a large percentage of the population, maybe over 90%, is capable of seeing these entities, and they just cognitive dissonance just prevents them from ever really confronting it. So your whole life you see all these entities and you don't think anything of it. I mean, that's pretty creepy. Once again, I'm not saying that's what it is. Maybe it really is just tricks of light in peripheral vision. We don't know. That's why we are examining all of these topics. So let's go back to the history of shadow people. So the theories on these range from just lost souls or entities from the underworld coming back to haunt, or it could just be a ghost, just a regular ghost that appears as a shadow for whatever reason. So shadow people kind of was brought back into the mainstream, the so-called mainstream, on April 12th, 2001 on Coast to Coast AM. Some people have actually compared Mindshock to Coast AM, which I take as a pretty big compliment because that was a paranormal radio show. It was a late night radio talk show where, I mean, you've heard of it, right?
Actually, no. No, I haven't.
Man, Maxwell's been living under a rock for many, many, many decades. Now, of course, you've heard about it. Remember that Area 51 caller that was all over the place? It was on a bunch of documentaries. Well, I'm sure you've heard of the show. You just don't remember because of clips or whatnot. I remember listening to some of these clips with you, so. But anyway, Art Bell, the host, he interviewed Thunder Strikes, a Native American elder, and they talked about shadow people. And a lot of people actually drew their impressions of what they saw, these paranormal entities, supposedly paranormal entities, and they were shared publicly on websites. Heidi Hollis published her first book on shadow people in October 2001. And she described shadow people as dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles that flicker in and out of peripheral vision, and claims that people have reported the figures attempting to jump on their chest and choke them. So this phenomena is also linked with sleep paralysis, with the Hat Man, with the old hag syndrome, where you feel like you can't breathe, and even extraterrestrial activity and extraterrestrial abductions. We're not going to focus too much on those because I think that they're relatively distinct phenomena that are not necessarily associated with shadow people. For example, if shadow people are kind of interdimensional entities, these other things could be interdimensional entities as well, but it could only be one entity. Whereas a shadow person, there could be dozens or hundreds or millions or billions, we have no idea, infinite shadow creatures. If there are infinite dimensions, there would be infinite shadow creatures, if shadow creatures exist. So yeah, we're not going to focus specifically on those topics. Those need their own dedicated podcasts. But have you ever had sleep paralysis, Maxwell?
Yes, I've experienced a few of them, but someone explained to me that it's some it some it happens in part of a sleep cycle, like maybe you're having a REM sleep and suddenly your eyes open So, but your body is not like connected to the mind, like as far as like motor control. So, like, so you wake up while you're in REM sleep or something, or your eyes open while you're in a REM sleep, but you're still dreaming, but you're perceiving these visions. I mean these
Well,
visual.
you know what I found interesting, because I've had it in the past before, but I think it's related to diet as well. Because some really healthy people, like raw vegans or some of these other really healthy eaters, generally I haven't really found that they have sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is experienced usually by people with a poorer diet, because, like you said, there's non optimal cell function between your physical motor abilities and certain regions of the brain. But I have had sleep paralysis before, and when I was reading theories, once again by these so-called skeptics, these illogical thinkers, or illogical people, not really thinkers, some people, I'm not talking about all of them, I'm talking about unique people who specifically say all alien abductions are simply cases of sleep paralysis or hallucinations. These are the people I'm targeting. Because once again, I don't necessarily believe in alien abductions, and I don't not believe either, because I don't know. I didn't witness. I wasn't at these locations. I don't know what happened. I'm not going to pretend that I do. We're just exploring different theories and different possibilities. So when I had sleep paralysis, I didn't see any figures or beings. I just simply was awake, couldn't move. It is sort of like a panic induced state because you're not 100% sure what's going on, but you can't move. I'm not sure why that would be linked to alien abductions, because it has nothing to do with aliens. And at the time, I was doing heavy research into extraterrestrials and alien abductions. So my mind, there were definitely thoughts in my mind of aliens. So, but what's interesting is that when you have so many cases that have nothing to do with aliens or the Hat Man or the old hag syndrome or shadow people, there's just simply you can't move your body. Were there any other entities when you experienced sleep paralysis?
No, no. But I remember it vaguely. I just remember like not being able to move. But there's sometimes like I won't be able to move for like a few minutes, and then 5 minutes later I'm able to. So I don't know. I
But
guess that's part of
you
it.
have sleep paralysis often?
Now, I've experienced it probably like 5 times in my life, or
Oh.
maybe I only remember five of it. Maybe it happened like
And so
thirty.
in all five cases there were no other entities of any kind there.
No,
Yeah, so I think that's most people's explanation or experience as well. So when there are other entities, once again, these are black and white fallacies, because let's say you're experiencing sleep paralysis and there really is a shadow person there. And then there's a person who doesn't experience sleep paralysis and there's a shadow person there. The shadow person isn't really linked to the sleep paralysis. These like false dichotomies and all these other fallacies, they're kind of weird. So you're looking at people just attempting to discredit for the sake of discrediting, to just because of their cognitive dissonance and their dogma. Very strange. But on Mindshock, we don't do that. So we're going to look at every single aspect of every single topic. So Hollis also, like many paranormal researchers, she believes that these shadow people are negative alien beings, but that they can be repelled by various means, including invoking the name of Jesus. Now, what do you think about that, Maxwell? Like all these demonic exorcisms and a lot of this paranormal activity, supposedly, like even a vampire not liking the sight of a cross, supposedly invoking the name of Jesus somehow repels these entities. The only theory that I've come up with, and once again, this deems its own podcast, is that in general, the nature of Jesus as percepted by people involved, by witnesses, by victims of these phenomena, is that Jesus is a loving, good being. So is it that energy, that positive energy of love, that these negative entities, they're allergic to this positive energy? So is it the energy associated with the name of Jesus that is repelling them? Because why would they be repelled just by a name?
I don't know.
No thoughts at all, Maxwell.
Uh, I don't know what to think of that.
All right, so let's move on to there's quite a bit of people who believe in a wide range of shadow people intentions. So some believe they are evil, some believe they are benevolent, others believe that they are neutral and that they are simply extra dimensional inhabitants of another universe. And there actually have been shadow people recorded on video and photographed. So exactly what is in this evidence, we will examine on our next Shadow People podcast. This one's just the background of what are they and theories. We'll go into specific accounts, encounters, and physical evidence in the next podcast. But yeah, I think it's interesting. And I also think it's interesting how there are these groups of people. I mean, they sort of kind of form camps. Oh, shadow people are aliens. Oh, shadow people are ghosts. So all of these black and white fallacies, I really try to avoid them because they're illogical. In an infinite universe where we know very little and everything we know could be wrong because we don't know from just learning from history all of the different aspects of knowledge that humans acquired, a lot of times it turns out to be false. Like our whole perception of how the universe works could be completely wrong. We don't know. So who's to say, why would we trap ourselves into this thinking of, well, if shadow people are real, they have to be only ghosts and they can't be aliens. Or if shadow people are real, they can only be ghosts and not interdimensional creatures. Is that kind of weird?
Not weird. It's just how people think. I mean, people generalize in general.
Most people are fallacious thinkers. Yes, yes, I agree
Uh,
with you there. But that's why Mindshock exists, so we can go over all of this. But same thing. So it's kind of like with ghosts. Are most ghosts evil? Even if that's true, even if 90% of ghosts are evil, that doesn't mean that there's not 5% that are good, 5% that are neutral, right? Some of them might just be entities that are just hanging out. They're not good
just
or evil.
hanging out. They don't even know they're ghosts or something.
Yeah, or if these shadow, let's say you're a shadow person, or let's say you're a squirrel. Do you know you're a squirrel and exactly
Yeah.
your place in the animal kingdom and
Yeah.
how humans relate to you?
Yeah,
You don't-
you're just looking for acorns.
Yeah, exactly. You're just going about your squirrel business. You're just jumping from branch to branch, having fun. So these shadow people could just be cruising dimension.
I'm curious about the photographs that you mentioned earlier that people actually took them.
Well, there's
Were they
video.
actually looking for shadow people, or were they kind of accidental, or what?
Well, both. So some of the paranormal investigators specifically were looking to get them, and then there's other. It's just like ghosts, you know. Some people photograph ghosts by accident. They might not even believe it's a ghost. They just have an anomaly, and they leave it up to the viewer to decide what it is. So briefly, so scientific, obviously, so-called scientific explanations range from sleep paralysis to hallucinations, which again, it's so strange how people immediately jump to it. I mean, yes, it's possible. And even if we say 90% are hallucinations, well, what about the other 10%? Like, it's just so weird to dismiss 100% of everything. That kind of fallacious thinking is just, it's weird. So, I mean, there's even so-called scientific experts who just wash away 100% of shadow people sightings as simply a person experiencing heightened emotion, like walking alone in the dark, would think that any patch of shadow is an attacker. I mean, there's actually people out there that's how they think. Also, what's interesting is that certain drug addicts, they report a lot of shadow people after not sleeping for certain periods, for long periods of time. But you know what's kind of weird about that is even in the once again, not to ascribe a black and white fallacy, are drug addicts or people that are kind of encompassed in negative energy, if demons or ghosts and all these things, if they're real, wouldn't people who are experiencing high negative emotions and negative energy in their life, wouldn't they be more susceptible, not less? So wouldn't it make sense that drug addicts would be more susceptible to this paranormal activity if they're real? Wouldn't that make more sense? How do people, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, you have altered state of consciousness, and I think, yeah, I can see if demons exist or whatever, like they can see someone in an altered state of consciousness to be more susceptible to their hijacking.
Yeah, especially if they're in a highly negative state, and if you believe in souls, your soul might be weakened at that point and unable to fight off more of these demonic negative entities. Similarly to how when immune system is compromised, you're more susceptible to attack from viruses or pathogens of various kinds, or fungus and bacteria. It's around everywhere, and just people with weakened immune systems are more susceptible to it. So if this paranormal phenomena exists all around us, people in negative states would be more susceptible to it. That doesn't it's just so fallacious to think that that constitutes whether or not the paranormal phenomena exists or not. That's like saying if a bunch of people have strong immune systems, they're not going to get a cold. That must mean that these colds or flus don't exist. Now, that doesn't mean that at all. That just means certain people would be more susceptible if they exist. That's the only point I was making there. All right, so let me read an article from bustle.com. It's pretty interesting. What are shadow people? These supernatural entities are scarier than any horror movie. This was written by Nina Khan, October 14th, 2018. The fear of the dark, it's a common one. One of the reasons darkness can be so scary is that our eyes tend to play tricks on us when the lights are low. A jacket hanging on the door can easily morph into what looks like a person, or a pillow stuffed under your blankets can appear as someone lurking in your bed. Sometimes it's easy to debunk these visions as your imagination. Thank goodness. But what if you saw something shadowy that wasn't a trick of the light? Dark, shadowy humanoid figures like these are actually known as shadow people. And to the many people who have studied them or experienced them firsthand, they are very real and extremely terrifying. Ever had the experience of reading or watching TV when suddenly, from the periphery of your vision, you see what appears to be a shadowy figure moving in the room, even for a moment? Again, it's easy to chalk up these experiences to your eyes playing tricks on you, or the reflection of a passing car. But countless people around the world have reported eerily similar sightings, some of them highly specific. Thus, the mystery of shadow people has captivated the minds of paranormal fiends everywhere. So, what exactly are shadow people, and how real can they possibly be? The term used to describe these alleged beings was apparently coined by author Heidi Hollis, who has penned several books on paranormal phenomena. Shadow people have been around since the beginning of time and are a dark influence upon society, Hollis said in an interview with radio show Coast to Coast AM. And it appears that these beings have, in fact, been around throughout history, as descriptions of shadowy human like figures have appeared in folklore dating back to ancient times. For example, the Quran mentions pitch black sapient beings that aren't entirely spiritual or physical. And people in ancient Europe reportedly believed that shadow beings, quote, desired blood and without it couldn't be reborn, end quote. That sounds very demonic. And in modern times, reports from people claiming to have seen these beings themselves come from all over the world. Most of these shadow creatures appear through our periphery vision, and people who see them are often unable to describe in details the features of these mystical entities, apart from their human like forms and occasional reports of fiery red eyes, explained Beyond Science TV. Similarly, in Hollis's book about shadow people titled The Secret War, she describes them as, quote, dark silhouettes with human shapes and profiles that flicker in and out of peripheral vision, end quote. But it appears that people have begun to see shadow people in more detail in recent times, perhaps because the beings are, for whatever horrifying reasons, making themselves seen. More and more people are beginning to see them straight on and for longer periods of time, explained ThoughtCo on its website, which also notes the appearance of red eyes on the shadow beings being prevalent. There are, of course, many theories about where shadow people come from and whether or not they're even real. Skeptics note that seeing shadow people could simply be chalked up to sleep paralysis, which is straight up terrifying in its own right. I don't care how much people explain it away. Heightened emotional states, or sleep deprivation, as people who have experienced these psychological conditions have noted a correlation. Although, if I might add, that still doesn't fully explain why they're all seeing the same creepy kind of thing, right? And of course, there's always the explanation that your peripheral vision is basically guaranteed to play tricks on you because it's designed to detect motion and movement, not detail. It's likely what you could make mountains out of molehills, or in this case, shadow people out of shadows, if you were in the right mindset. And here's my quick aside on that. Once again, it's just like the negative emotional states being more susceptible to demonic activity. If your peripheral vision is specifically designed to see movement, if these paranormal entities are real, you would be more likely to see them out of your periphery. So, once again, when people try to explain it away or so called debunk it by saying it's designed to see movement, well, if there are paranormal entities moving, wouldn't your periphery spot them easier than the middle of your eye?
Exactly.
Yeah, so interesting. Okay, back to the article. But then there are the paranormal theories, the ones that seem to resonate more with the people who have actually lived through the terrifying encounters and feel strongly that shadow people are more than just imaginary. Another quick aside that I feel is necessary is how much stock do you put in people's intuition? Because the people sitting on the sidelines who have never had these experiences, it's kind of weird how these people object. Supposedly they're saying they're being objective, which is true since they weren't the subject, they're not subjective. But at the same time, does being objective in this particular case, is that more likely or less likely to move you to the truth? Because someone who experienced it themselves, if you put stock in their own intuition and they're saying it wasn't of this world or there was something weird about it, how much stock do you put in people's intuition?
Um, yeah, that's a tough one. I don't know. I guess you just get a lot of samples with the same experience, and then you can base it on that.
Well, isn't it kind of interesting how the people who experience it usually point to the paranormal, and then the people that are armchair quarterbacking the analysis, they put it not in the paranormal, almost as if to suit their cognitive dissonance, right?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, they're trying to be so-called scientific, I guess, and they're trying to put everything in that box, and they can't.
Well, yeah, and the irony is in trying to be scientific, they're being unscientific because they're not recognizing their own dissonance or dogmatic thinking, the inside the box thinking. All right, so back to the article. But then there are paranormal theories, yes, the ones that seem to resonate more with the people who have actually lived through the terrifying encounters and feel strongly that shadow people are more than just imaginary. Hollis, through her research and experience, apparently believes that shadow people are extraterrestrial in origin. In other words, they're aliens. Author and leading paranormal expert Rosemary Ellen Guiley appears to have seen an alien connection. I discovered that many shadow people experiencers are also ET experiencers, especially abductees, Guiley told Psychology Today in an interview. So perhaps these beings are alien in origin, but others believe that they may be ghosts, demons, or other kinds of interdimensional beings. According to Natalia Kuna, a psychic medium, shadow people are said to be conscious, intelligent, interdimensional beings that can shapeshift into various forms and figurations and move back and forth between dimensions. That sounds okay, right? But not so fast. I'm going to do another aside because I just thought of another possible explanation. If these are extraterrestrials, you know how like humans send mini robots or whatnot to explore certain areas that might be too dangerous to explore, or the tunnels are too small? Like under the pyramids or through pyramid tunnels, they've actually put robots, mechanical robots, and things like that with cameras. What if shadow people are some kind of an advanced technology that an extraterrestrial or even interdimensional, if an extraterrestrial is sitting up in their spaceship, it might be too dangerous for them to go down. So what if they can do some kind of semi-physical projection that can gather intel? What do you think about that?
That's awesome. Shadow drones.
Yeah. Yeah, like a shadow drone entity that can record information, or you can experience it directly, like some kind of a weird virtual or augmented reality projection or holographic projection. So it can possibly carry your consciousness or just communicate with your consciousness. So if they're down on Earth doing research, once again, I'm not saying this is the case or that this is the case in most of these accounts. I just thought of that now in terms of if there is an extraterrestrial connection, wouldn't it be smarter to use some kind of a shadow drone that can't be caught? Because if they're actually sending down their technology like a physical drone and it's captured for whatever reason, if they don't want to give themselves away, or if there are multiple extraterrestrial races, like some people allege, and they're all at war with each other, all this other crazy insanity, wouldn't a shadow type of drone that can't be trapped or recovered, wouldn't that be the smarter way to go about it?
Yes, definitely. That's why we use drones to dismantle bombs and such.
Yeah, so this is like next level technology, shadow drones. So back to the article, most reports on shadow people are overwhelmingly negative. Encounters with shadow people tend to be accompanied by a feeling of dread, according to many reports. And sorry, but the glowing red eyes are decidedly unchill, in my opinion. But there are allegedly different types of shadow beings, and some of them are non-threatening. Most of the time, though, it's just dark and scary. Apparently, there's one type of shadow person that is said to be more demonic in nature, and that's known as the Hat Man, and is reportedly seen wearing a top hat and suit. You know, it'd be crazy if the Hat Man was Jack the Ripper.
That's funny.
I don't know if I've ever seen that theory floated. I gotta flesh that out a little bit more. Other times, shadow people have been reported to attempt a physical attack during an encounter, similar to some sleep paralysis experiences. Shadow people are sometimes discovered by a person who wakes up to find them trying to choke or suffocate them, said Hollis in an interview with Coast to Coast AM. Overall, I'm not feeling super great about this whole shadow person business, but I guess we'll have to live with the knowledge now. You can bet I'll be surrounding my bed with protective crystals tonight, and I think we can all agree that we'll be feeling an extra twinge of fear the next time we see something slightly shadowy in our periphery. You know what else is interesting? It's kind of crazy how if these are some kind of interdimensional parasite type demonic entities, they just want to kill people or cause distress, so they just go around preying on sleeping humans. How crazy is that?
Yeah, that's crazy.
I mean, is it really that different than, let's say, predators in the African wild? Like if you need to eat something, so you go around in the night and you're gonna attack your sleeping prey because it's easier.
That's funny. I wonder if they reproduce. Like,
You're curious as to how shadow people reproduce?
well, I'm thinking like, you know how humans have these survival instincts to reproduce and such. I'm wondering if, I don't know, these entities would reproduce, or they reproduce by hijacking humans and creating more ghosts out of them.
Well,
I
I
don't
think
know.
it would also depend on how, yeah, the true origin of the shadow people and their lifespans. Because if they're not really physical, they wouldn't have a short lifespan. They could theoretically be immortal, right, or infinite. So that's
Right, or like you said, they feed on negative energy. So like maybe the more negative a person is, the more they can reproduce. Or if or if like two shadow people combine each other in a negative person,
they're
they produce another two.
so they're kind of like asexual. Like when they have enough
Yeah,
negative energy, they could split into more shadow people.
or something like that.
All right. So let's get into the peripheral vision aspect of it. So this is a post by Rob Luby. And so this is a post I found on a paranormal investigators group. Can we better see ghosts by using our peripheral vision? Many sightings of ghosts are reported as being seen out of the corner of people's eyes through what's called our peripheral vision. So we wanted to explore peripheral vision and ghosts because some wish to discredit the human ability to accurately see entities through anything, but our central vision. Can ghosts be detected through the sides of our eyes? Let's explore. The argument against accurately seeing ghosts through peripheral vision has gained strength because we can be tricked into seeing things that are not there by our brains. While it is common for the brain to gather snapshots from the periphery and then fill in the blanks, known as the phenomenon of seeing something that isn't there, it is still possible that peripheral vision can enhance our ability to see and detect ghosts. Because many reports of ghosts seem to occur during the evening, maybe because people prefer to ghost hunt at night, allow me to briefly explain human eyesight in low light conditions. Receptor cells in the back of the eye can be divided up into two types: rods and cones. Our central vision, used for detailed viewing, relies upon the cones. Peripheral vision depends upon the rods. The differences between these photoreceptor cells give us different capabilities within our collective eyesight. And for viewing ghosts, that could be important to know. For example, when seeing in dark environments, it is well known that our central vision is weak due to reliance upon bright light, while peripheral vision is much stronger. The rods in our eyes used for seeing the periphery operate much better during low light conditions than cones. This allows the eye to detect light that is 1 billion times dimmer than bright sunlight. On the downside, seeing things out of the corner of our eyes does produce images with less clarity in most cases, but this is not always true. Although peripheral vision is not used to distinguish colors, it is much better at detecting motion. The combination of seeing no color coupled with the excellent ability at detecting movement could be another reason many have reported seeing dark, black, shadowy ghosts move from the corner of their eyes. If you still think this portion of our eyesight has little merit, then you will need to argue with the military. It is well known by the US Army that faint objects in the dark are better viewed by our peripheral vision. Troops are often taught not to focus on objects directly at night, but to direct their vision to one side in order to see them better. Coincidentally, contact lenses would be preferred over glasses in order to maintain a clear path to the periphery. So again, this kind of supports the ghost theory, because if these shadow people, if they're not really shadows, if they really are full color entities with high detail or whatnot, but if you can only see them out of the periphery, they would appear as a shadow even if they're not. That makes sense, right?
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, so let's move on to different frequencies and wavelengths of light. Humans see the range of light known as the visible light spectrum. The typical human eyeball can see the wavelength range of 380 to 750 nanometers. The various wavelengths in the spectrum of visible light are seen as different colors by the three types of photoreceptor cones in our central vision, spanning the full range of hues. Peaking near the center of the visible spectrum at about 500 nanometers, the vision of our photoreceptor rods is sensitized to the wavelengths of violet, blue, green, and yellow, though they cannot see them as colors but in shades of gray. The longer wavelengths of orange and red are completely eliminated from the peripheral part of our eyesight. Knowing this, we could say our peripheral vision is actually more focused towards monitoring more of the middle range of visible light and not interfered with by higher wavelengths. Could this be a factor that might somehow make our peripheral vision better equipped to see ghosts at times? Maybe. Although we have shared our thoughts about seeing ghosts through our peripheral vision, it is also possible to see ghosts through our central vision, shadow ghosts included. Our point is that there doesn't seem to be one simple answer that explains the mystery of when, where, how, and why we see ghosts. Therefore, we need to keep an open mind. Okay, so here are my thoughts on this. Is it similar to so some people have 20/20 vision. Some people don't. Some people have very bad vision. So obviously this would factor into who can see what. Similar to how certain animals like dogs can see much better in certain wavelengths. So if like, for example, we can't see infrared. It's invisible to the human eye. However, that doesn't mean that infrared doesn't exist. So if these shadow people or ghosts or a lot of these paranormal entities, if they can only be viewed in certain wavelengths, and once again, this goes both ways. So both to the observer would have to be capable of seeing certain wavelengths, and a particular entity, if they exist, would have to exist in a certain particular wavelength range. So different entities might have different ranges, and different people have different ranges that they're able to see. So if the periphery gives you slightly more in a specific range that certain paranormal entities might be in, that would explain everything, would it not?
Possibly.
That's all you got, Maxwell?
That's all I got.
All right, let's go a little deeper into the corner of the eye phenomena and shadow ghost. So this is from ASSAP.ac.uk, the Association for the Scientific Study of Anomalous Phenomena, the Paranormal Education and Research Charity. So this is from their website. Paranormal reports sometimes include mentions of things seen in corner of the eye, occasionally as part of a wider haunting. Typically, the phenomena are fleeting and usually vanishes if a witness turns to look straight at them. So once again, does this support or debunk? Because if your periphery is capable of detecting motion and the wavelength and is optimized for certain wavelengths, when you go to look at it with the middle of your eye and you don't see it, does that help prove that it wasn't there, or does that help prove that it was, but it only exists in a certain wavelength? I'm just asking, Maxwell. I'm just asking.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I'd like to read up on like the so-called scientific
Well, I'm giving you.
explanation.
I just gave you a lot of scientific information on what the periphery is optimized for certain wavelengths and for motion,
Yeah.
and not specifically detailed. But let's look at another example. So let's say you have infrared goggles on, and you can see like let's say you're a burglar and you're breaking into an art museum, and they have these lasers for the security system. So you put on infrared goggles and you see the lasers. Then you take the goggles off, and you're like, oh well, must have been a trick of the eye. The lasers aren't really there. Is that what the corner of the eye is? It can detect. It's optimized for different wavelengths, so you can see it out of the corner of your eye, but you can't see it with the middle. So now I'm going to give you one of my experiences. So I've had this experience both while walking and driving, and half the time, I would say probably even more than half the time, it's not at night; it's during the daytime. So I see movement, like this dark shadowy movement out of the corner of the eye, and then I look at it because it gets my attention. Like my brain doesn't even have time to process. Is this a ghost? Is this a shadow person? It's like it's kind of like almost like a quick animal movement where it just draws your attention. So I just turn my head to look. I'm not thinking it's paranormal. I'm not thinking it's not paranormal. I don't have time for that. It's just an instinct. I look at it. It's not there. So then I turn back straight, and then it's there again. And now I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. Then when I try to look at it straight, I can't see it. And then I turn, and I can see it again out of the periphery. And sometimes this repeats multiple times, and then it's gone. So does that mean nothing was ever there? Does that mean something was there and it could only be seen out of the periphery? And when it was no longer there, my periphery couldn't see it either because it wasn't there. Your analysis, Maxwell?
Yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah, I don't know.
All right, so let me go back to this website. So the corner of the eye phenomena. So yes, typically the phenomena are fleeting and usually vanish if witnesses turn to look straight at them. They are generally reported to look like shadows, often resembling faces or human figures. And by the way, I've never seen a face in the periphery, just figures. And I'm even going to dispute the human figures because I don't know if I would go that far to say they were human. It could have been an animal. I would say a lot of the times my snap judgment to look real quick, for example, if I was hiking in the woods or whatnot, or even driving on a road, I might think it's a deer. So I look at to make sure there's no deer running across the road because I don't want to hit it and and have an accident. I personally have not experienced them to look specifically like human figures. Anyway, so for this reason, they are often called shadow ghosts or shadow people. Some people even think they represent some kind of demon or other strange entity. Corner of the eye phenomena. Before we can consider whether such corner of the eye phenomena might be paranormal, we need to understand what to expect from the normal operation of our peripheral vision. Here's a picture to illustrate how your peripheral vision can change the way things look. It may produce different results depending on your computer screen, the illumination in your room, and your own visual system, from your eyes to the brain. So nothing is guaranteed. Start by looking well to the right of the picture above so that it is barely visible. Note how you cannot see any shape in detail and probably no colors either. Now rotate your head leftwards very slowly, always staring directly forward so that you are aware of more and more of the photo. Gradually, shapes and colors in the photo should become more distinct and obvious. Eventually, when looking just to the right of the photo, you may become aware of an apparent face. The face will probably vanish as you finally stare directly at the photo. Don't worry if you don't see the face. We are all different, and some people will see it while others will not. The face is seen in profile, looking rightwards. Probably the best place to stare at is the tiny red flower about halfway up the photo and about 1/4 of the way from the right edge of the frame. Stare at the flower, and the large face, if you see it at all, should appear to the left. Try looking from different distances and the face may pop out. Even if you don't see a face, you may well see part of the picture. The lighter portion of the in-focus bit appears to pop out from the rest. Some people may even see a face when looking directly at the photo. Others won't see a face at all at any time during the exercise. Either way, the experiment should still demonstrate that peripheral vision of complex shapes and colors, like those in the photo, is poor. You only really see the details photo well when looking directly at it. Using peripheral vision increases the chance of seeing faces and figures in random patterns. The area where we have a clear, detailed view of anything is surprisingly small. To demonstrate this, stare at one word in the middle of this paragraph. Without changing where you are staring, how many words can you read on either side, above and below? The answer is not very many at all. Peripheral vision. So how come the picture in your head looks so detailed if we can only see such a tiny area in high resolution? The answer is that our eyes constantly focus more of our eyes are more about rapidly scanning the scene ahead. Then our brains assemble the picture in our heads from the recent scans. For much more on this important topic, see common misconception. Outside the central area of the picture in our head, there is much lower resolution. Being used to it, you probably don't even notice this. Peripheral vision is produced largely by retinal rod cells. Unlike the cone cells that produce the central detailed views, rods have poor resolution. Rods are more sensitive to light and movement than cones, but cannot see color. Multiple rod cells converge into a single intraneuron cell. This reduces overall resolution, like merging several pixels into one on a TV picture, but improves sensitivity to movement. This poor resolution and high sensitivity to movement is what causes everyday corner of the eye phenomena, where you are vaguely aware of something in your peripheral vision but cannot see it properly. Rod's insensitivity to color and poor resolution means that corner of the eye phenomena are typically black and white and their shapes vague. If you turn to look at an object seen in the corner of your eye, you will start to see it in much greater detail and in color. As a consequence, it will look completely different. What was a vague dark shadow in the corner of your eye will turn into a differently shaped object in full color. Sometimes the difference will be so pronounced that the original object will appear to vanish. Due to the inbuilt human propensity to see faces and figures in random shapes, it is inevitable that some corner of the eye phenomenon include such shapes. Once we turn to look at them properly, they will no longer make sense as figures or faces. Our brains will then rationalize that this face or figure has vanished. It is no wonder that witnesses think they have seen a ghost or shadow person. Furthermore, our brains may substitute objects that are not seen as well, such as those in peripheral vision, with similar things from our visual memory. These visual substitutions, which occur before we are consciously aware of what we're seeing, can appear strikingly real. Such substitutions are not limited to just faces and figures, though these are common. That's super interesting because In John Keel's work, and we talk about him quite a bunch, I talk about him extensively on the Mothman series. You can check that out on the channel. He believes that a lot of these paranormal phenomena draw upon information already in the brain of the observer. So that's why throughout history you might see these weird paranormal entities in olden times dressed as they would back then. And in modern times you might get men in black or extraterrestrials or whatnot, because it's using information in someone's brain to fill in gaps, so to speak. What do you think about that?
That's interesting.
That's all you got, Maxwell?
That's all I got.
Maxwell Army. Distance is difficult to judge in peripheral vision, partly due to a lack of details and also because some objects may only be visible in one eye. No stereopsis, due to the nose intruding. The distance of objects seen in peripheral vision may thus often be wrongly reported. Something nearby may appear farther away or vice versa. In particular, a nearby small object can appear bigger and further away. Naturally, the effect disappears when you turn to look directly at the object. So a large object, seen as a ghost, in the middle distance vanishes, leaving only a small bush nearby. Shadow ghosts. Of course, some people believe that shadow people and shadow ghosts exist as genuine paranormal phenomena. There are reports of shadow ghosts seen when looking straight ahead. One possible explanation for shadow ghosts seen in direct vision is actual shadows. Shadow ghosts are also sometimes reported in photographs and videos. These are usually photographic artifacts. However, where shadows are seen only in peripheral vision, the explanation given above must certainly be considered. If people are convinced they are living in a haunted house, they may notice such natural phenomena more acutely than usual, sensitized to the idea by psychological suggestion. Once again, I'm going to counter that point by saying if that house really is a haunted house, they'd be more likely to see these entities. So both are true. So once again, I'm not going to fall for the black and white fallacy either. If the house is not haunted and a person believes it is haunted, then they would possibly see more shadow people. Just like if the house is actually haunted, if the entities are real, they would also be more likely to see more. So I don't see how that debunks it. It's kind of, again, fallacious. An interesting point about shadow ghosts is that many are typically seen to be moving. If they weren't, they probably wouldn't be noticed. There are motion illusions related to peripheral vision that may account for certain specific sightings. The peripheral drift illusion occurs when you observe an object with alternating black and white and sometimes gray lines or rectangles, or something resembling that situation. When such objects are observed in the peripheral vision, anomalous motion may appear. In real life cases, this might occur in a semi-dark situation with fence posts, railings, stair banister spindles, or wheels, particularly if they are painted white. The illusion is thought to be caused by the way our brains detect motion in our visual fields. So once again, I completely agree. So if 90% of cases occurred around these things, then that could possibly be an explanation if shadow people aren't real. If they are real, what would stop them from appearing where there are also stair banisters, railings, fences, or wheels? Like, why would they be allergic to appearing around those as well? And then, of course, this doesn't factor in shadow people seen in flat plain type areas or in areas where there are no such objects. The other thing I'm going to say, because I've experienced that as well in like cluttered basements and such, where I thought I saw something. And once again, maybe it was a shadow person, but instinctually, I didn't feel that it was a real moving object. Once again, all depends on how much you put stock into intuition. So when I was in a cluttered basement and I thought I saw movement, I didn't have the instinct or intuition that it was an actual real being or object moving. Whereas when I noticed it either walking outdoors or while driving, and I looked at it and it wasn't there, but I could still see it in my periphery, my instinct is that it was something real. I mean, it could have just been a deer that was going between trees and I didn't really notice it when I looked straight on, but because the periphery is better at detecting motion, or it was moving whatever in the shadows, it could have been a deer. I'm not saying I saw a humanoid figure. I didn't. But if we're putting stock in intuition and subconscious, I felt that situation, it was an actual moving entity, whereas in a cluttered basement, I didn't get that feeling that it was a real moving entity like a deer. I don't think there was a deer in that basement, whereas there could have been by the side of the road. Okay, so let's move on to night vision. In low light, our retinal cone cells do not work and we rely on our rods. This means that the world can look radically different to the one we know from normal daylight vision. One problem, though, is that rods need time to adapt to reach maximum sensitivity in low light. Some 30 to 45 minutes to get to 80% or of full sensitivity. Even once you have adapted to night vision, there are more problems to consider. Poor resolution. Object shapes are not seen well and can be misinterpreted. No colors visible. Objects tend to resemble either shadows or white lights. A shift in sensitivity towards the blue end of the spectrum in the Purkinje effect. Autokinesis, small stationary objects appear to move if you stare at them. Night blind spot, best eyesight resolution is 50 to 20 degrees off center. Poor depth perception and poor ability to see exactly where moving objects are. Once again, I'm going to say this. The reason why most people might be spotting ghosts at night is because, once again, the periphery is more designed for that. So does that disprove they're seeing? Wouldn't that increase the amount of frequency that if paranormal entities are real, that they would be seen more often at night?
I can see that.
Yeah, so once again, it's just so fallacious to just completely debunk all of them, whereas this could prove it true as well. It's just pretty interesting if they're real. Of course, once again, we don't know, but if they are, this would prove the sightings at an increase would prove the reason for the increase in sightings at night. These significant changes in vision in low light can help explain many apparent paranormal phenomena seen in low light as examples of misperception. In particular, this also applies to investigation vigils held in the dark. And once again, if there is some of these haunted locations, people see quite a few ghosts in the daytime and at night, and they describe the ghost wearing the same thing. So how are they going to account for that in this explanation? And once again, I'm not saying that 90% or even more or less, I don't know, could easily be explained by all these things. Might be true, but since we don't know, we're not going to pretend it's true. Low light misperception. The various visual impairments brought about by low light conditions inevitably increase the possibility of misperception. Such misperception, as in the daylight version, can be affected by psychological suggestion. In particular, the night blind spot means that objects seen straight ahead look fuzzy compared with those seen at a slight angle, like 15 to 20 degrees off center. In daylight, we see objects straight ahead best, so there is a tendency to do the same at night. It means, however, that objects may easily be misperceived by staring directly towards them. This fact alone may account for many reports of ghosts in low light conditions. Incidentally, this is not the same as the anatomical blind spot, which does not normally affect vision in daylight or at night. Small moving lights are quite frequently reported on vigils. These lights could be produced by LED indicators for instruments or domestic appliances, or from light thrown on the walls from gaps in curtains or under doors. Whatever causes such lights, if you stare at them in the dark, they will usually appear to move. This is autokinesis, and it may be responsible for reports where people claim to have seen orbs with the naked eye. Ah, man, that's kind of interesting. I'm sure you've been in your house at night and you've seen a crack of light under the door. Did it appear to be moving? I don't recall any cases where that happened.
I don't remember anything. I don't know. I haven't seen anything like
The
that.
only thing I can compare this to is sometimes driving at night on a highway that doesn't have reflectors and is not well lit. I do remember certain lights of cars having a certain drift effect, especially when I was tired while driving. But I'm not going to mistake that for a shadow person or a ghost. That's kind of weird. Again, I'm sure there are certain people out there that have made the mistake. But again, since we don't have the percentages, if ghosts are real, 90% of them could have seen a real ghost and 10% could have been had this misconception of light. So it's kind of, yeah, once again, we don't really know how to ascribe percentages. Though night vision allows good perception of movement, it is more difficult to say exactly where a moving object is in low light. The fact that everything appears black or white in low light can also give rise to shadow ghosts or ghostly white figures. Finally, the lengthy time required by eyes to adapt to low light means that for long periods people may see very little at all. Such sensory deprivation can sometimes lead to hallucination. Unfortunately, these factors typically combine a dark vigil. In typical vigils, divided up into several dark sessions separated by well lit breaks, night vision adaptation times are a real problem. For much of the time, investigators will not be able to see anything, much even when it is there to be seen. For these reasons, dark vigils are of limited value for scientific evidence, because central vision is dominated by the cone rich fovea, which doesn't work in low light. You know, the other thing they're completely ignoring here for some reason is when videos, especially in night vision, are used in some of these dark vigils and they match up with what the investigators are seeing. Or sometimes on security cameras, when these so called alleged ghosts, if that video is real, they match the description seen by multiple witnesses. So that's a bit strange. And one other point is that why ghosts can appear to be white if they can only exist in that spectrum and or the human eye can only see them in that wavelength with those colors, that would explain why they would be seeing them as dark shadowy figures or as white light translucent type ghosts if they're real. So does this prove or disprove? Like, you can use this information to prove it or disprove it, but since we don't know, a true skeptic would not jump to either assumption because we don't know. Further oddities. If you look at something red straight ahead, you are more likely to notice red objects in your peripheral vision at the same time, though objects in peripheral vision still look black and white. You will also notice the motion of all red objects in your visual field. This could explain why some objects in our peripheral vision may become more noticeable even when they don't change or move. It is bound up in something called attentional focus. It is just another oddity of the way our perception works that it could explain certain anomalous observations. And it's true, it could explain them. Since we don't know the real, I mean, maybe 1% of all of these misidentifications really are exactly what this article stated. Or maybe 90%, or maybe 99. But what about all the other ones? How does it help prove or disprove the existence of shadow people? The other interesting point is a lot of shadow people I've never seen the glowing red eyes, but if your periphery is not capable of seeing red, why would they be seeing shadow people out of the periphery with red eyes?
I see what you mean.
So that's also kind of anomalous. Pretty weird. Pretty weird. All right, so that's basically the scientific angle of how peripheral vision works versus direct vision with cones and rods, the differences, the wavelengths, the colors, the movement detection. So it's pretty interesting because if shadow people are real, then that scientifically perfectly explains why they would be more likely to be seen from the periphery. So you wanted some more scientific thoughts on it. I mean, I gave you a bunch of scientific data. What do you think now?
I find that interesting when you look at the red and straight ahead, and you can see more red in the background. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, the eyes are definitely very, very complex and equipped for different situations. I mean, it's pretty fascinating how the human eye is designed and everything that it can do. You still think it all came from a rock?
I don't really think about anything.
Oh, that needs to be on your mug. Maxwell Powers. I don't really think about anything. All right, I'm going to do one more article that I thought was pretty interesting because we're going to examine motivations of shadow people. Are these simply dark evil entities? Or are they tricksters in disguise of shadows? Or are they possibly some kind of benevolent entities? So this article is by Kitty Fields. It was published on November 16th, 2018. Terrifying, yet harmless shadow people. Kitty Fields has had paranormal experiences her entire life. These experiences have fueled her passion to write about all things supernatural. What is a shadow person? A shadow person is a dark, shadowy, indistinct yet humanoid shape that's usually seen at night out of the corner of one's eye. These harmless apparitions often flee once they have been detected. You know what else is kind of weird? You know how, like, in your backyard or in the woods, sometimes if you spot like even a squirrel or some random wild animal, when you see it and they see that you see them, they run away.
Yeah, wait, what about that?
Well, maybe that's how shadow people operate. If they're these
I
strange
see. So,
interdimensional entities, they're just going about their business, cruising dimensions or cruising in between dimensions, looking for energy to feast on. And when you spot them, they run away because they don't know, if they don't know what you are, if they don't know what
yeah,
humans are or what our dimension is, they
yeah,
don't know if humans can harm them or not. So they can get spooked and then just jump back to another dimension or continue on their way.
they look at you for a while though. I don't know.
Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're not sure if you see them or not, because if you freeze when you see a wild animal, they're frozen looking at you, you're frozen looking at them. Do you see shadow people? You are lying in bed, comfortable and exhausted from a long day. You reach over and turn off the lamp on your nightstand. Click. The night light in the bathroom is shining dimly through the doorway of your bedroom. You begin to drift off to sleep. Well, speaking of which, you have a night light, right, Maxwell?
Yeah.
It's too scary sleeping in pitch black, right?
Yeah.
You begin to drift off to sleep, and then you see it. A dark, pitch black figure has flown into your room from the hallway, seemingly floating above the foot of your bed, staring down at you. You want to move and scream, but you can't. This frightening image has left you speechless, waiting for death to overcome your physical being, waiting for the life to be sucked from your body. But nothing happens. The shadow person made a looming and frightening appearance for less than a minute and then disappeared into thin air. Did you see red eyes glaring at you from within the mass of this dark creature? Michelle Bellinger, author of Haunting Experiences, Encounters with the Otherworldly, describes these occurrences as hauntings. The odd thing about it is that they seem so evil when they appear, but all they seem to do is observe and examine us. Once again, that sort of points to extraterrestrial shadow drone, right? Or it could just be if these demonic entities don't have physical power, they can only feed off your fear and negative emotions. So that's their energy, and then once they feast, they leave. But the other really scary thought I just had is, what if all around us at all times there are infinite interdimensional entities, demons, good, bad, whatever, and only in certain lighting conditions, due to the nature of the human eye, can we see them, but they're always there. So you got like a whole bunch of demons just hanging out with you right now, Maxwell, and you can't see them. They're just chilling.
Hope they're enjoying my company.
They're just chilling. They got like their arms around your shoulder, just hanging out, and you can't even see them or feel them. Is that creepy or what?
That's pretty cool. I'll hang out with them.
Stories about and experiences of meeting shadow people. Shadow people, also known as shadow men or shadow folk, are said to usually appear in a person's peripheral vision, darting away upon being seen. However, there are rare circumstances when people have come face to face with one. According to historical records, their main motive thus far seems to have been simply to watch us. Watch how we act or how we function. No accounts speak with much authority, but there are several stories and theories. Michelle Bellinger's book tells of several of her psychic friends' experiences in which they were visited by shadow people. These shadows did not hide in the corner of those witnesses' peripheral vision, but rather watched out in the open. One thing I find particularly interesting about these accounts is that many have reported seeing ones with red or yellow eyes, and always in the wee hours of the morning. 3 a.m. seems to be the common hour at which sightings occur. Once again, we will get into the 3 a.m. phenomenon in its own dedicated podcast. Quite a witching time. It's known as the witching hour. It's not actually midnight. 3 a.m. is the witching hour where spirits or interdimensional entities can be at full strength. But that's another occult topic for another podcast. These beings have been known to haunt a particular person as opposed to a specific house or building. And even more intriguing is the fact that many of these hauntings last for a short period of time and then cease to recur. Usually they appear as a silhouette of a person. However, on other occasions, they have appeared as dark blobs or mists that ominously fill an otherwise dimly lit room or space. Some of these silhouettes have been wearing a fedora hat or even a hooded cloak of sorts. The belief in and recorded accounts of shadow people are not limited to one region or country. They seem to make their presence known worldwide. There are online forums where many people from all over the world share their supernatural experiences with others who have gone through the same terror. Are shadow people bad or evil? Because people fear darkness, many think these apparitions have bad intentions. Though these beings have been described by many paranormal investigators and witnesses as evil, there really has been no direct contact between a shadow person and a human being that involved any proof of malice or anger. In fact, most of the time, these beings do not physically touch their victims at all, if you could even call them victims. I prefer to use the term witnesses, since no harm or crime comes of the encounter. Another quick aside, if we're talking Hat Man or the old hag syndrome, where if that is a shadow entity, they are actively choking the person and choking the life out of them. And not to go really, really, really dark, but why not? Are we unaware of how many people have died in their sleep that might have been killed by a shadow entity?
Yeah, that's creepy as hell.
I know. I mean, we could be talking untold numbers because if the autopsy just shows up as natural causes when it was, or heart attacks, like let's say older people or even younger people that have had heart attacks and died, what caused the heart attack? Was it a shadow person? We don't know. And if the shadow person is choking them, if it's a shadow entity that's non physical, would there be physical evidence on their neck even if they did have the life choked out of them? We don't know. Very,
The
very
eh, the
creepy.
they but the reports on like people saying that they saw the shadows coming at them about to choke them. Was there a lot of that, or was it?
I mean, there's so many countless sightings and
But
witnesses.
is that a common thing? Like
What do you
the
mean by
shadows.
what do you mean by
Like
common? I mean,
what I mean is were there a lot of reports that
yes.
the shadows were about to choke them out?
And there was also a lot of reports that they weren't. So
Eh.
I mean,
It's just I don't know. It's just interesting. I haven't really
there's
heard that, but
reports.
that's creepy as hell.
There's a lot of reports of all kinds. I just
Yeah.
gave you my report. I didn't. I've never seen a humanoid shadow type person, but I've seen
Yeah.
shadowy figures in my peripheral where when I look directly at it, I couldn't see it, and when I looked away, I could see it again. Sometimes it appeared to be following me, but again, it could have been a deer in the trees. I don't know. I just didn't
Uh,
see it when I looked straight at it. But and I'm not going to tell someone else what their experience was because I didn't have their
uh,
experience. So I found an account of a young man who claims to have spoken to a shady figure at the top of his stairs. He asked what it wanted, and it replied that it wouldn't hurt him and it just wanted to watch. That's real creepy. It just wanted to watch him for life. I mean, is this a shadow drone from extraterrestrials or interdimensional entities that are just researching humans? That's so freaking creepy.
yeah, that's messed up.
Michelle Bellinger's account seems to back up this man's experience with the fact that these beings seem to be merely observing us in our daily lives, usually when we are not paying attention, like during sleep or when we're occupied with the TV or computer. But what are shadow people and why do they want to observe us? So, what are shadow people then? Many theories circulate the internet and paranormal world as to what these apparitions really are. Of course, no one knows for sure, but here are some theories. Possibly the most logical and believable explanation is simply that they are a figment of our overactive and hypersensitive imaginations. Psychologists often find logical explanations for paranormal experience after all. Pareidolia is a term that could be referenced when speaking of the sightings of shadow people. It describes the experience of seeing something that is not actually there. A typical example is seeing a face in the clouds or a shadowy figure in the corner of one's vision. Once again, I'm calling black and white fallacy. So if that happens 50%, 90%, or even 99% of the time, if there really is something there that you see, explaining it away with this would not be an accurate depiction of the truth, would it?
No.
So I always find it kind of strange when everybody wants to just blanketly explain a phenomena or paint with a broad brush. I mean, these fallacies are just so obviously illogical. Even if they do explain even possibly the majority of sightings, that still doesn't explain the real truth and the other sighting. Hypnagogia is another commonly referenced theory of explanation. This is the waking dreaming state in which one is suspended between wake and sleep. Being that I am a frequent hypnagogia dreamer, I know how real these dreams can feel. It's sort of like when you are just falling asleep and you have a quick little dream that you are walking in a parking lot and then your leg falls into a pothole. In reality, your leg jerks and you wake up, realizing that very real experience was merely a dream. I'm going counterpoint on this one. If when you dream, you go to other dimensions, like some people believe, if that really did happen in the other dimension, wouldn't your leg physically have a reaction as well? I mean, we're talking chicken or the egg here. How do you know what caused what? Did that physical action of your leg moving, was that a result of a real interdimensional experience? You know how like they did those experiments where if you make someone believe that someone is, let's say, putting out a cigarette on their skin, a physical burn mark will appear on their skin. Have you seen those experiments?
I've not seen it, but I heard about them.
I mean, it's the same category as the placebo effect. When someone gets a sugar pill and they have a headache, but they're told they're given a really powerful medication, their mind gets rid of the headache for them, or stomach ache or whatnot.
Yeah, yep,
And
yep.
so
The power of the mind.
the power of the mind is proven by the placebo effect. So once again, she's using this hypnagogia as an explanation where I'm not, once again, I'm not going to go black and white fallacy on that, because that physical reaction could be a result of some kind of psychological experience in an alternate dimension. What do you think about that?
That's interesting.
She goes on to say, in my article, Personal Hauntings, the Stalker's Spirit and Territorial Ghost in Florida, I describe being stalked by a spirit and feeling psychically attacked for a period of about a month. Before that, I had never heard of shadow people, nor had I heard that these beings seem to appear to people in a state of hypnagogia. My feelings of being stalked or watched and paralyzed upon waking seem to correspond to the experiences that many others have had. Do I believe that shadow people are dreams? I don't know. Well, another counterpoint is if these interdimensional beings can only affect you when you're not in your normal mental state, again, would that debunk their existence, or would that explain, would that physical state explain the occurrences of them if they are real? Because sightings often happen to those who are experiencing insomnia or sleep deprivation, for example, methamphetamine addicts, who often report seeing these dark figures after prolonged periods without sleep, these visions may be hallucinations triggered by sleeplessness. Those who suffer from sleep disorders like sleep paralysis often report seeing these dark figures. Once again, refer to my previous point. If they are real, wouldn't they be more likely to plague these types of people? There are many psychological and physiological conditions that could account for this experience. A person suffering from psychological trauma or experiencing heightened emotions might misinterpret normal objects. Or, once again, for the third time, that would make them more susceptible to shadow people if shadow people are real, would it not?
I don't know.
Other blasé and predictable theories are that they are ghosts or demons. My problem with that theory is that these beings seem to be totally different in nature when compared to other accounts of ghosts and demons. Oh man, I have to go black and white fallacy again. So if a deer is a lot different than a bear or a chicken or a fish, does that mean that some animal can't be identified as either one of those creatures? Who says that ghosts or demons are only allowed to be of one kind of nature if they're real? It's all these black and white fallacies are so strange. Though many people who have seen shadow people claim they are evil, I think that this ignorance can be chalked up to the fact that people often mistrust things they don't understand. As far as I've read and seen, these beings are not innately malicious. Okay, fair point there, but once again, black and white fallacy. Some of them could be malicious, some of them might not be malicious. It's so strange how people want to ascribe a certain trait to something completely. It's so weird. Like, how many different species of animals are on Earth? The animal kingdom is so vast. If interdimensional creatures are real, wouldn't their so-called interdimensional kingdom of species be extremely diverse?
I see what you mean.
If there are infinite dimensions, and each dimension has its own entities of vast different types of entities, different types of species of entities with different types of natures. I mean, it's, to me, if all of this is real, that seems much more logical than saying, oh, well, Bigfoot can only be brown. There can be no such thing as a Yeti, and they can't be white. Or only black bears are allowed to exist and not polar bears. It's so weird. I don't know. It's just so illogical. What if shadow people are actual shadows of the undead? Are they sneaking into our homes at night and allowing only their shadows to be seen? Some might find this theory far fetched because even if you do believe in the undead, they are thought to not have a shadow or reflection. A more intriguing theory is that they are actually travelers from another dimension or a parallel universe that are here to gain knowledge and information about us and our dimension. This is an interesting theory to be further explored by paranormal investigators and quantum physicists. So, what do you think, Maxwell, now that you have all this different information on shadow people? We've examined the scientific nature of how the human eye works and how the periphery works. What are your thoughts on shadow people now?
Um, I don't know. It's still a mystery to me because haven't really experienced a lot of shadow people.
So, you've experienced some?
Um, I'm not sure. I've just experienced movement a little bit,
Okay.
but I don't really. I don't know.
So, yeah, on our next Shadow People episode, we will be going into sightings, accounts, and visual evidence, photographs, videos, and we will dissect and try to separate the hoaxers from the genuine. And even if they're genuine, that doesn't mean they captured a shadow person. So it could have been an anomaly. We don't know. We will be going down all the rabbit holes. So, once again, if you enjoyed the episode, you can donate to our PayPal. Just check the link in the description. Make sure you're subscribed to Mindshock. Hit the bell for notification. If you liked the video, hit like. Feel free to share it across all social media platforms. Make sure to like our Facebook page, and you could also check us out on Reddit, Patreon, and Twitter. And if you have any questions, comments, experiences you'd like to share, leave it in the comments and we will get to all of them and discuss the various aspects of the very bizarre phenomena that is shadow people. This is Bruce McGuire signing off.
And Maxwell Powers.
See you guys next time.